The ashes of who I used to be. 1. Names are important. They tell you a lot about a man. Unfortunately, mine follows me like an angry ghost. James McNeil, but back on the force, everyone called me Jimmy. Nowadays, people call me scumbag and pig, something along those lines. Some are better than others. I have a list. I swirled the whiskey in my glass, watching the amber liquid slosh against the sides. It was the same flavor as the ghost that haunted me, the remains of who I used to be, before it all went to hell. I used to care about that badge, wore it with pride, convinced I was one of the good guys. What a joke. Turns out the job was just another racket, and I was damn good at working the system. Maybe too good. It started small, turning a blind eye here and there, letting perps walk for the right price. Cash in hand, no questions asked. Before I knew it, I was knee-deep in more gray area dealings than I care to recall. Shakedowns, evidence tampering, you name it. As long as the money was green and the paperwork clean, what did it matter? I told myself it was for a good cause, a few extra bills to pay off the mortgage, send the kids to college. But the truth is, I liked the game too much. The thrill of pulling strings from the shadows, making my own rules. Power is a hell of a drug. Looking back, I can see how it was bound to blow up in my face eventually, but I kept pushing the envelope, reckless in my invincibility, until one rookie ADA got too nosy, started following the money trail. Lance Sinclair. Even his name leaves a bad taste in my mouth. The feds had been circling for years, waiting for that one mistake to drop the hammer, and Sinclair gifted-wrapped me perfect. Stripped me of the badge, paraded my dirty deeds on the evening news. Just like that, Jimmy McNeil went from detective to depraved in the court of public opinion. Not that this dump is much different than my old stomping grounds. Satan's roadhouse is crawling with lowlifes and two-bit criminals, just the kind I used to churn through the system. And now I'm one of them, drinking away what's left of my senses. Funny how the tables turn. I tipped back the last of the whiskey, relishing the familiar burn. This was my life now, wallowing in the murky waters I helped create. At least the company was familiar. And when I was good and drunk, I could pretend the whiskey held all the answers that eluded me sober. Just then, a ruckus broke out at the other end of the bar. Two thugs were getting in each other's face, exchanging heated words. I watched lazily as fists started flying, glasses shattering, tables upending. Breaking up bar fights used to be part of the job. Not anymore. These days, I kept my head down and minded my own business. What did I care if these assholes wanted to bash each other's faces in? But as more patrons piled in to watch the show, I started to feel restless. My cop instincts were still in there somewhere, buried under layers of apathy and shame. Against my better judgment, I cracked my knuckles and slid off the bar stool. "All right, break it up before I'm forced to intervene," I called out gruffly. The brawlers paused, sizing me up. Then they rushed me. And just like that, Jimmy McNeil was back in the game. They moved fast, but years on the streets had honed my reflexes. I sidestepped the first blow and snapped an elbow into Thug One's jaw, feeling the crunch of impact. He went down hard, chair skidding away from his fallen body. Thug 2 charged with a guttural yell, swinging wildly. I ducked under his haymaker and plowed my shoulder into his gut. All the breath whooshed from his lungs as I lifted him off his feet and slammed him onto a nearby table. It collapsed under the force, splintering wood everywhere. But I'd forgotten how brawls tend to escalate in Satan's. Before I knew it, some asshole blindsided me with a right hook. Stars burst behind my eyes as I staggered, tastes of copper filling my mouth. In the chaos, someone grabbed a bottle off the bar. Glass shattered against the back of my skull, and liquor burned the open wound. Red clouded my vision. These pricks wanted to party? Fine, we'd throw one hell of a rager. I spun, throwing forearms without restraint. Bones crunched, noses exploded in gouts of red. My fists battered flesh without mercy until another body slammed into me. We crashed through a window in a shower of glittering fragments. Glass embedded in my skin like crystalline shrapnel. I ignored the sting, grappling with my new opponent. With a roar, I lifted him and suplexed him onto the asphalt. His skull bounced sickeningly off the pavement. Through the red haze, I saw Thug 1 staggering out the busted window frame, lips split and eye swollen shut. His good eye blazed with hate. He brandished a jagged bottleneck, aiming a lethal thrust at my gut. On pure instinct, my hand closed around the first object within reach, a loose cobblestone. I chucked it with all my strength. It caught him square in the throat with a wet crunch. Clutching his ruined windpipe, he collapsed face first onto the concrete. The noise had drawn a crowd from inside. I spun, fists raised and stained, daring anyone else to step up. But they shrank back warily, seeing the raw violence churning in my eyes. Something primal had awakened in me tonight, the monster I thought long buried. "Enough!" Satan bellowed, emerging from the roadhouse beside his hulking bodyguard, Lucius. "Take your business elsewhere, McNeil, and don't come back till you've cooled off." My knuckles were flayed and bloody, chest heaving. With a sneer, I turned and lurched into the night, ghosts swirling in my mind. Something told me this was only the beginning. 1. My brain throbbed mercilessly as I dragged myself to the cafe meeting spot the next morning. The cuts on my knuckles had scabbed over, crusted reminders of the previous night's anarchy. I groaned and sucked back black coffee, hoping the caffeine jolt would drown out my hangover demons. Running my protection racket was the only thing keeping a roof over my head these days, and my contacts on the force still owed me a few favors, so I got word of upcoming raids and busts before they went down. Couldn't let my clients get pinched unprepared, after all. Bad for business. Which led me to this meet with Tony Marks, one of my more volatile customers. Tony dealt cocaine wholesale from his strip mall import studio. Guy was paranoid as hell, always a hair's breadth from losing it, but his product moved weight, and he paid well to stay off the radar. I pulled into the diner lot, scouting for Tony's rusting Civic. My neck ached as I scanned. Guess some punk got in a lucky shot last night. Finally spotted the Civic 2 rows over, engine rumbling as Tony puffed agitatedly out the window. My boots crunched gravel as I sauntered over, raising a hand in greeting. "Morning, Tony. Got some news I thought you'd want to hear." He cracked the window, beady eyes darting restlessly beneath greasy locks. His clothes were rumpled, 3 days' stubble on his gaunt cheeks. Looked like he was on a bender. "This better be good, McNeil," he hissed nasally. "I ain't got time for your bullshit today." I blew out a sigh. "Easy killer. Just got word certain friends in blue are poking around your place of work. Rumor is a raid might hit in the next couple days. Figured you'd like a head start clearing house." Tony's eyes bulged more prominently now, fingers clenching the wheel like he meant to wring someone's neck. His whole frame shook with tension, and God knew what chemicals. "Fucking pigs! They'll never take me alive!" "Calm down," I warned firmly. My headache spiked watching him vibrate on the verge of meltdown. "You lay low for 48 hours. They'll move on to easier targets. Then it's business as usual." Tony's crazed gaze found mine, verging on homicidal. I tensed, wondering if I was about to end up in a ditch myself. But then he emitted a high tremolo laugh. "You always did watch my back, McNeil. Consider your warning heeded." His deranged grin sent chills up my strung-out nerves. "Glad we understand each other," I muttered, backing hastily away. My work here was done. Now I just needed a bottle, and to put as much distance as possible between me and the human time bomb named Tony Marks. I slid into my rusty Chevy, slamming the door behind me with a grunt. As I inserted the key, my burner started buzzing obstinately on the seat. Only one asshole would be calling. I answered with a weary sigh. "What do you want, Satan?" It still amused me how a man so pious ended up with such an ironic moniker. Frank Satan Diable looked more Jesus than any of those gilded icons you see peddled outside bars. Long hair, trimmed beard. If it wasn't for the scar bisecting his left eye, he could have been the spitting image of peace, love, and understanding. No idea how he got saddled with Satan, but rumors swirled it involved an ex-wife in a case of mistaken identity during one of his acts of charity. Whatever the joke was, it stuck like a bad tattoo, and Satan fucking hated it, despite all his professed humility. A gravelly voice dragged through broken glass on the other end. "McNeil, you better get your drunken ass back down to the roadhouse. Bar looks like a bomb hit it, and you're footing the repair bill. Cash. Tonight." I sighed, massaging my throbbing temples. "Look, money's tight. Why don't I just work it off?" Tending bar or bouncing drunks could earn me enough to cover damages, what little was left of my dignity intact. But that wouldn't fly with Satan. An annoyed grunt. "No more freebies, McNeil. You and me are square since I let your shit fly here. But you trash my place again. Consider your tab called due in full. Cash or blood, I don't discriminate. Got it?" I wasn't eager to find out which form of payment he preferred. "Yeah, I got it," I muttered, ending the call. Guess I'd be making some collections of my own. Time to check in with my snitches, squeeze some low-life customers for clues on easy scores. Couldn't show my face back at Satan's empty-handed. And after last night's festivities, I was due for a little enforcement of my own. The Chevy rumbled to life, ferrying me back into the cesspool. Another day, another dollar, however I could scrape them up. The Chevy peeled around a corner, eyes peeled for any signs of movement in this neighborhood of broken dreams. Then I spotted a familiar shock of rust-colored hair ducking into an alley up ahead. Showtime. Tommy bolted as soon as he heard my engine, scrawny legs pumping frantically. Kid always did like to play cat and mouse, even at 16. I sighed, creaking open the door and giving chase. Being 45, my stride wasn't what it used to be, but I was wiry and pissed off, which counted for something. A few panting steps later, I launched myself through the air with a grunt. My larger mass slammed into Tommy's skinny frame, toppling us both to the damp concrete in a tangle of flailing limbs. "Gotcha, you little shit!" I growled between breaths. The cuffs clasped expertly around his wrists, ignoring his squealed protests. Kid kicked and squirmed whilst I dragged him upright, used to this dance by now. Truth was, he never really fought me. This was our routine, his way to save face in front of his scumbag associates. I tossed him gruffly into the back seat and dropped heavily into the driver's chair. "The usual, Tommy. Info gets you free. Now what have you heard on the circuit today?" My tone was clipped, in no mood for games after this morning's debacles. Tommy's mouth worked silently for a minute, big doe eyes watering pathetically behind matted bangs. Then words started sputtering out like verbal diarrhea. Okay. I heard Roscoe's got a big shipment of electronics coming in tonight, prime for the taking. Or Mickey's been letting slip about a high roller game he's hosting. Fat stacks of cash on the table. Please, Mr. McNeil, just let me go this time." I pondered a moment, massaging my stubbly chin. Both prospects held potential for a fast score, but I knew Roscoe. Word of mouth didn't equate to solid intel, and I had no stomach for a dangerous gambling den today. "All right, kid, you earned another pass. Electronics it is." I pulled the cuffs loose as Tommy rubbed fiercely at chafed wrists. "Now scram before I change my mind." 2. I parked a block south of Roscoe's Electronics in my usual stakeout spot, deserted alley with a clear view, but enough shadows to cloak the Chevy if needed. Tuning my police-grade binoculars, I began the monotonous watch, sifting for anything out of the ordinary. Hours crept by as I observed the steady rhythm, employees arriving one by one, trucks delivering inventory, usual supply run drivers coming and going. I made notes of schedules, faces, license plates out of habit. My law enforcement instincts died hard, even if the rest of me was going steadily to pot. As the afternoon waned, sun glinting harshly off too many storefront windows, I felt my attention waning too. Years on the job taught patience, but boredom was the ultimate enemy. I was just contemplating cutting my losses when headlights caught my eye, an unmarked moving van slowing outside the shop. Now that perked my interest. Roscoe's regular haulers all sported logos, easy to ID. This towering white beast had no markings at all. As I watched through high-powered lenses, my cop senses started tingling. The van's back doors popped open to reveal not furniture or appliances as expected, but heavy wooden crates, the kind used to disguise contraband. Two burly men emerged to unload, furtively scanning for observers as they worked with haste. Bingo. Instinct and experience told me what my eyes saw. This wasn't any ordinary delivery. Roscoe was up to his neck in some kind of hot merchandise, and I aimed to find out what. I started up the Chevy with a rumble, cruising a discreet distance behind the suspicious van. My interest grew when we pulled into an abandoned lumber yard, not a location most would choose for legal transactions. I doused my lights and engine, easing out with binoculars to observe unnoticed. The men were unloading crates double quick now, clearly antsy to complete their illicit business and flee. As the final boxes touched ground, one pried open the top for inspection by a newcomer. Even through optics, that matte metallic glint could only mean one thing: high-powered firearms, the kind that give any sane person pause. I'd hit pay dirt. Flicking on my recorder, I documented license plates and grainy images for evidence before retreating unobserved. This find could be leveraged in more ways than one. Roscoe and I were due for a little chat, one where I came out on top for a change. It was time the money started flowing my direction again. My fist hammered Roscoe's front gate like a battering ram. "Open up! It's McNeil!" The shutter cranked open a sliver, beady eyes regarding me suspiciously from the gloom within. "The hell do you want, Jimmy?" I flashed my smuggest grin. "Just wanted a word about your new imports. Nice gear. Shame if it fell into the wrong hands." Outside, my pistol weighed heavy in my coat, safety off. You never knew when backup plans were needed. Roscoe's face pinched tight. A moment passed as dollars danced behind his eyes, calculating risks and rewards. Then the gate buzzed open. "You got 5 minutes." We convened in his sparse office, surrounded by gadgets winking silently in their boxes. I got straight to business. "We both know your latest cargo ain't meant for store shelves, but you and we understand each other, yeah? So how's about you cut me in? Monthly protection payments and all this." I gestured broadly. "Stays between us." His brow furrowed grudgingly. Another internal ledger balancing. Then, "Fine, you get 10% off the top, first of every month, but one peep of this to the cops, and it's your body I'm fencing next, capiche?" I grinned thinly. "Perfectly." We shook on the deal, cementing our new partnership in crime. Just then, the back stockroom door burst open with a crash. 2 figures swarmed in masked, gloved, brandishing pistols. "Everybody on the fucking floor!" one bellowed. Cursing myself for letting guard down even for an instant, I drew and fired in one smooth motion, dropping the closer intruder instantly. But his partner was quicker, clocking me across the skull with his piece. Stars exploded as I collided with a shelf, weapons clattering away. Through the ringing, chaotic shouts echoed. Roscoe pleaded uselessly as a pistol whipped his face to pulpy meat. Fighting unconsciousness, I groped blindly through the haze. My searching fingers closed around cold steel, a handgun, loaded if I was lucky. With the last of my waning strength, I took aim and squeezed. My ears rang with gunfire as the smoke cleared. 2 bodies lay sprawled and the store sported new bloodstains, but it all passed in a daze. Self-preservation kicked in. I stumbled from the shop, snatching car keys with trembling hands. Vaguely, sirens wailed in the distance as neighbors phoned cops. I didn't wait to find out who they targeted first. The Chevy roared to life with a vengeance, peeling burning rubber from the curb. I had to put distance between me and this whole mess, Stat. But where could I go to nurse my frayed nerves and aching head? Satan's was out. He'd happily deliver me to the wolves in my compromised state. I swerved down back alleys on autopilot, searching desperately for any dive with decent hooch and minimal questions asked. Finally, gravel crunched under wheels once more as I skidded into a vacant lot. Neon light cast shadows through grimy windows, advertising Jim's Joint in flickering cursive. Good enough. I lurched through the doors, drawing stares that I ignored, heading straight for the soothing burn of whiskey. Slamming back shot after shot, the horrors of the evening melted into an unpleasant blur. But there were gaps in my recollection I couldn't quite piece together, and the blood on my coat told its own twisted tale. Somehow I knew things had irrevocably changed tonight, in ways that could spell bad news for old Jimmy if I wasn't careful. Another drink slid down my parched throat, offering momentary solace. Tomorrow I'd have to start damage control, tie up loose ends before they strangled me. But for tonight, oblivion would do just fine. The whiskey burned away the edges of my panic, if only for moments at a time. I nursed drink after drink, trying to drown the gnawing questions that rose with each swallow. What really happened back there? Was anyone else hurt in the chaos? How much did I actually see through the haze of pain and adrenaline? Deep down, I knew the answers wouldn't bring comfort or closure. At some point, the fuzzy TV in the corner switched to a local news broadcast. I barely registered the opening fluff piece, too lost in my swirling thoughts. But then, a familiar address flashed on screen, jolting me to full grim attention. Scene of a grisly double homicide at Roscoe's Electronics earlier this evening. Police sources confirmed 2 masked intruders were found dead at the scene from gunshot wounds. The owner, one Roscoe Johnson, is currently in critical condition at County General Hospital after a severe beating during the botched robbery. Ice water pumped through my veins as the implications punched me in the gut. I'd killed those men, no longer an accident or vague memory, but cold, hard fact. Leaving Roscoe alive was the one loose thread that might strangle me yet. The report droned on, heedless of my mounting dread. Witnesses place a person of interest fleeing the scene this evening, one James McNeil, a known criminal element with violent tendencies. McNeil is considered armed and dangerous. Anyone with information on his whereabouts should contact authorities immediately. My blood turned to sludge in my veins at the sound of my name ringing out in that damning newscaster tone. The whole bar had gone dead silent, eyes boring accusingly into my flushed face. I choked down the last of my whiskey in one fiery gulp, slammed a $100 bill onto the sticky bar top, and fled into the dark without a backward glance. No going back now. I was a wanted man on the run from my own mess. Only one thing for it: disappear into the underbelly where I thrived for so long, then emerge cleaned up or not at all. Either way, Jimmy McNeil was a dead man walking from here on out. The tires ate up miles as I leaned on the accelerator, fleeing all that I'd left behind. But the whiskey I'd used to numb reality began to cloud my thoughts instead, waves of nausea rising in my empty gut. All around me stretched endless fields dyed silver by moonlight, shadowy stalks swaying ominously in the night breeze. No shelter or soul in sight. I might have driven clean off the edge of the earth for all any witness could say. In my deteriorating state, it felt that way too. The monotony conspired with my swirling insides, each mile marker blending into the next without meaning. All markers of time and place had fallen away, leaving just me alone with my swirling demons in this featureless void. until the ghosts rising in my throat could be denied no more. Suddenly, the Chevy swerved onto the shoulder with a jolt, tires crunching gravel. I threw open the door and spilled the contents of my stomach violently onto the roadside. Bile and regret joined the whiskey burning my veins and searing my eyes. What felt like hours passed as I dry heaved and gasped for fresh air, clinging to the doorframe for anchor. When the spasms finally eased, I sank bonelessly back into the driver's seat, physically and emotionally spent. Grim realization set in that I was in no state to drive further tonight, one mishap away from becoming roadkill or joining my victims. Squinting through bleary eyes, I glimpsed a dirt track winding ghostly between the wheat patches ahead. With leaden movements, I guided the car onto the path and parked perpendicular behind a small rise, concealing us from any late passers-by. Then I slumped onto the leather seat in a stupor, not remembering drifting into fitful dreams as full dark descended. 3. Consciousness returned like a sledgehammer between the eyes. Groaning, I pried open gummed lids to stare bewildered at dirt and wheat stretching endlessly around me. For several hazy moments, fragmented memories swirled with no sense of direction. Where was I? What town lay behind, ahead, to any side? My phone sat dead as the Daystar, offering no hints. Squinting painfully at the pitiless blue vault overhead, I reasoned the sun hung west. "Better than nothing," I muttered, turning the key with a cough and a rumble. "Easy does it, Jimmy boy. First stop. Any joint serving drink strong enough to scrub the taste of failure from my mouth." Minutes or hours may have passed as the Chevy lumbered down that brown ribbon cutting the gold plains. Only the sun marked passage, slowly roasting my brain in its rays. Just when madness seemed the kinder option, a mirage shimmered on the wavy horizon. Wooden buildings took shape through the heat haze, a small cluster that promised life and other lost souls. Hope surged, giving me strength for the last desperate stretch. Soon, rumbling tires rolled into a dust devil of a town, 2 streets, a boarded storefront, and a weathered saloon. I didn't let myself ponder the local law or lack thereof, too parched to care. Stumbling inside, darkness enveloped and a stiff drink materialized, just what the soul ordered. Leather creaked as I collapsed at the bar, past and future blurring once more into blissful oblivion. "Many thanks for the hospitality, friend," I said, raising my refilled glass in a toast. "It's a rare thing to find in these parts. I'll be sure not to overstay my welcome." The barkeep dried another mug, scrutinizing me openly. "You still ain't said what brings you out this way. Not often we get new faces around these parts, especially ones as rough around the edges as yours." I scratched noncommittally at my beard. "Just passing through, looking to lay low a spell if you folks'll have me. Don't much care for gossip or prying. A man's past is his own, you know. I know trouble when I see it, and trouble's bad for business." His gruff tone held a note of warning. I held up my hands peaceably. "No need for threats, friend. No trouble for me, I swear it. Just need a place to lick my wounds a while, then be on my way once I've got my feet back under me." He pondered me a long moment, eyes flinty and unreadable. Eventually, he just grunted again. "Long as you cause no fuss, you're free to rest your legs here. But one toe out of line and it's the road for you mighty quick, got it?" I graced him with an easy smile. "Got it loud and clear. I surely thank you for the generosity, partner." Inside, though, anxious questions churned. How long could I hide in this tiny oasis before everything goes to shit? The buzz crept upwards as I knocked back drink after drink, dulling the world's sharp edges. The bartender tutted disapprovingly but kept him coming, knowing his type. As twilight fell, the hard floor felt uncharitable, so I dug out crumpled bills and bid my new friend adieu. Stumbling outside, the warm breeze nearly blew me over. Which way lay refuge? Eyes alighting on the Chevy, trusty steed, I giggled. I'll find a room to rest my head, come what may. The engine sputtered to life, and off I navigated down the potholed streets into the waning dusk. Soon, a neon sign flickered into view through bleary eyes. "The 25-hour joint," it declared, followed by a naughty, winky face that set me laughing. "Well now, what a delightfully disreputable establishment," I whooped to myself, swinging wide into the dusty lot. A swaying figure emerged from the office as I fumbled for my flask, probably the proprietor, and he seemed amused by my inebriated antics. After some semi-coherent bartering through the window, a key changed hands along with most of my remaining small bills. Then it was up the creaking stairs to a door, worn but promising 4 walls and bolted privacy within. Darkness and the sour scent of old cigarette smoke greeted me as I collapsed onto scratchy sheets. One last swig remained in my hip flask. I toasted my dingy surroundings before draining dry that final drop of blissful oblivion. For now, this would do just fine. No past, no future, only the promise of dreamless slumber at long last. As the alcohol churned in my gut, I lurched over to study my haggard reflection in the dingy mirror. What stared back bore little resemblance to the man I'd once been. Dark bags rested heavy under roomy eyes, webbed with lines from hard living. A webwork of scars crisscrossed my stubbled jowls, remnants of bar fights past, and a piece of my damn ear still missing since junior high. My once lush locks had long since grayed and thinned, wisps combated hopelessly by daily applications of grease. And the rest of me had filled out, all hard-lived sinew and soft middle, clad now in day-old stubble and rumpled threads. A far cry from tall, dark, and handsome, now just another bitter has been clinging to the dregs. But I'd come too far to crawl into that hole just yet, so I upturned the bottle to rinse away self-reflection. That's when raised voices penetrated even my whiskey-dampened senses. Angry words flew through the paper-thin walls, escalating into screams and crashes. Then a woman began sobbing in pain-laced gasps, punctuated by guttural male threats. My blood curdled to hear it. Always did hate an unfair fight. With a grunt, I dragged myself to my feet and shouldered out into the dimming passageway just in time to see a pimp backhanding a cowering girl hard enough to throw her small frame against the peeling door. I didn't wait for further abuse. Hammering a meaty fist on warped wood, I bellowed, "You got 5 seconds to walk away before I come in swinging, pal." Self-preservation at least stayed his hand long enough for the girl to scramble inside. Then he whirled on me, lip curled in a sneer. "This ain't none of your business, old man. Now scram before you get hurt." A grim smirk twisted my battered mug. "Oh, I've been hurt before, sonny. Now get lost before the real pain starts." My itchy knuckles begged release. Just once, let me do some good in this sorry world. My fists moved of their own accord, years of resentment and frustration channeled into each blow. The pimp reeled under the onslaught, futilely attempting to shield his face as bone crunched. Blood splattered the dingy carpet like macabre paint. Dimly, I registered the girl's screams to stop, but the red haze had descended. It wasn't until she pulled frantically at my arm that I hauled back, chest heaving. Bruises bloomed across the man's pulpy visage, most features lost to swelling. Gently, I hauled his limp form into a chair outside their door. "Stay. Good boy, now don't move," I growled, every word ice. Exhaustion crashed through me then as the adrenaline faded. Swaying, I shoved through my own door and collapsed face down onto rumpled sheets still soaked in sweat and sin. Sleep claimed me at last in a nightmare of my own making. The urban cacophony sliced through my tender skull like daggers. Shrieking kids, politicos ranting on every corner, needle fries hollerin' bargains to the gods. Each cranked decibel compounded my remorseful hangover. With a snarled curse, I hauled myself from sweat-stained sheets, stumbling zombie-like to slam shut the shade against the sensory assault. But no luck. Memories haunted with near-tangible clarity. A decade flashed before my mind's eye in shameful snapshots. Flesh traded, laws broken, souls crushed underfoot, all in the name of business. And for what? Moments of fleeting power, danger, cash. An empty bottle sat mocking judgment on my failures. Sinking onto mildewed mattress, I dropped my haggard face into calloused palms. How had it all gone so wrong, so fast? Was there any coming back from the brink, or only the abyss that yawned ever wider? Just then, stomach snarled piteously, recalling it had been empty since... when, exactly? Out the grimy window, salvation gleamed, a seedy diner across the lot, promising bad coffee and eggs that looked better days ago. With a surly grunt, I hauled protesting limbs upright once more. Redemption could wait. For now, nourishment might make facing this cesspool hour to hour slightly more bearable. Out into the fray I shuffled, resigned if still defiant. Let the games continue. I shoved through the diner's squeaky door, stomach leading the way. The usual crowd milled about, voices buzzing with small-town familiarity that excluded this weary traveler. Sliding onto a vinyl booth, I scanned for service, taking in the eclectic mix of regulars. 2 elderly women gossiped sharply further down, while a few booths over a group of hunters compared tall tales from past seasons. But my ears pricked at a hushed discussion 2 tables back. A pack of teenagers leaned intently over phones, pale faces aglow in the screen light. "There's just no way it's random," one whispered fervently. "With the timeline and locations, it has to be one sick puppet master pulling the strings across parish lines." Their ominous speculation piqued darker memories best left buried. Before I could listen closer, a cheery voice interrupted. "What'll it be, hun?" The chipper waitress name tag read, Emma. I cleared my throat. "Cup of joe and the special, please." As she bustled off, I turned focus back to my meal, pushing past lingering what-ifs. But the teen's theories of a calculating hunter sowing disappearances nagged at recesses of my battered mind. "Best eat up and move along," I reminded myself grimly. Yet somehow, their ominous discussion had helped dispel some small part of the restless unease dogging my heels since leaving that forsaken town. I scraped the last smears of egg from my plate, washing it down with bitter sludge masquerading as coffee. Tossing bills on the table, I shoved outside, sunlight assailing eyes grown too accustomed to shadows. In the lot, I fished out my battered laptop, firing up the engine as it connected to the diner's spotty Wi-Fi. First search brought up a local blog dedicated to investigating the Craven County serial, as they called this unseen threat. Squinting at the backlit screen, details emerged of a disturbing pattern stretching back over a decade. Dozens missing across 8 small towns, victims varying in gender, age, background, the sole similarities being lone status and snatched from isolated areas after dark. No bodies ever turned up, nor were any abductions conclusively linked due to shoddy interdepartmental cooperation. Still, enterprising bloggers pieced clues together, building a psychological profile of a calculating, organized offender escalating frequency. Their analysis matched the teens' conclusions uncannily. One monster, not many, exploiting jurisdictional cracks to feed unseen appetites below the radar of the overtly focused authorities. A chill crept my spine, imagining such a deviant, unknown, right under law's insensitive nose. 4. The Chevy rumbled me through Craven's humble streets, crumbling back alleys and seedy strips coming into focus. Faded storefronts bore witness to better eras. The vacant diner where dreams went to die, pawn shops brimming with dusty regrets. Occasional figures roamed, peddling vices as old as time, A gaunt woman leaning too close into passing trucks, fishing lines dangling limp bait. Scrawny youths loitering with intent just shy of legal outside the liquor mart. This burg's grimy underbelly clung tighter than the humid air. But home is what you make it, as they say, and some glimpses stirred dark humors well. Like the preacher shrieking damnation outside the gentleman's club, while half his flock escaped within. Small towns breed small minds and big secrets, going by twitchy eyes that followed my out-of-place Chevy prowling slow, though rumors were probably richer fodder than any truth to be excavated from the gossip trenches here. My bored pilgrimage came to a natural end where rural sprawl bled into swampland. With a scratch of stubble and sigh, I wheeled around to scour again for clues, distractions, anything to ward off darker thoughts circling like carrion birds on the humid horizon. I continued my aimless drive around Craven's worn streets, idly taking in the sights and people. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting everything in an orange-tinted haze. Up ahead, a woman hurried along the sidewalk, arms wrapped tight around her body. Nothing unusual in itself, but then I noticed the hooded figure trailing a few paces behind, gaze fixed unblinkingly on her stride. An all-too-well-practiced predatory gleam shone in his eyes. Something in the scum's slithering gait struck me as off, like an insect sensing prey's weakness. And sure enough, up ahead a woman hurried, glancing fearfully back at a looming figure tailing too close. My foot pressed heavier as I tailed the pair, maintaining distance. But the woman picked up her pace, purse clutched white-knuckled. I could see the man's leer intensifying each step. When she grabbed for mace, he lunged. With a snarl, I swung the Chevy onto the sidewalk, throwing open the door into his path. He careened right into my steel grip, and I dragged his flailing carcass struggling into the nearest alley's murk. The woman cried out, spraying empty air before hurrying off safely in confusion. Good riddance. Now for the filth locked in my vice. I slammed him against grimy bricks hard enough to crack skull against unforgiving concrete. Through a red haze, I pummeled his lolling head again and again, pouring out every frustrated outrage I'd bottled for years, seeing women preyed upon by bottom feeders like him. When at last my bleeding knuckles begged relief, his face lay an unrecognizable ruin beneath my fists. With a surly spit on the pulpy mess, I hauled myself upright, joints creaking. The woman was long gone, and no one would come hunting for this trash. Justice was served, for now at least, in Craven's back alleys. The scumbag lay in a crumpled heap, breath bubbling wetly from smashed lips. Hauling in heaving lungfuls, I searched his slack form for clues to this human trash. A strange tattoo caught my eye. On his wrist, barely visible under pulpy skin, lurked an ornate moth. But what drew notice was the skull nestled in its thorax, as if hinting some sinister secret society. I'd seen such obscure markings before, usually branding more unsavory types. Stowing that mental image, I stood on creaking joints and scanned for witnesses. Finding none, I exited the alley unnoticed except by buzzing flies descending to feast. Back in my car, a pint of 90-proof liquid courage awaited under the seat. I tossed it back despite its warm potency, peeling away bitter dregs clinging to my tongue. Hours later found me parked before my seedy motel, empty bottle lodged firm between thighs. Darkness pressed close as my mind reeled back to cleaner days beyond reach. But just then, a small figure darted through murk, terror writ clear on their face. And a van lurched after, accelerating as they swooped, snatching the unseen prey with brutal efficiency. Pure instinct shot adrenaline through my veins once more. Time to give chase. The Chevy roared to life, screeching tirelessly down the coming night. This wretched game had new players now. The black van tore out of Craven with me hard on its tailpipe, burning rubber in pursuit down the dark highway. Whoever was inside clearly had no qualms snatching innocence in plain sight. I sped fearlessly between lanes, dodging startled vehicles lurching out of my reckless way as sirens screamed in my rear view. Let the 5-0 tail us. I had bigger fish to fry, and this little girl's life hung in the balance. Up ahead, the woods rose dense and impenetrable along the roadside. My instincts screamed as the van suddenly swerved into the murky tree line, vanishing from the highway mayhem. With gritted teeth, I followed blindly into the twisting dirt path. Trunk and branch whipped my windows wild as the Chevy bounced over rugged terrain not meant for tires. Through the thrashing canopy, I saw the van careening wildly ahead, racing deeper into shadowed wilderness. Then suddenly it lost control, fishtailing madly towards a ravine. And time slowed. Its side clipped a thick oak, launching the van into the darkness below as its scream faded. My jubilation died along with my own control, flying at a turn too hot. There was an almighty crunch and then nothing, only thick, clutching blackness dragging me under. Consciousness returned unwillingly through a fog of agony. My body screamed as I crawled from the wreck, hand coming away slick with warm blood. Stumbling, the forest twisted madly around me. Somehow I staggered towards distant crash sounds until a smoking husk emerged through the trees. Its driver hung limply from the shattered windshield, clearly dead. But in the back, twitching fingers came into view. Fighting the nausea, I ripped the side door open, and there she lay, eyes rolling wildly in shock and pain. One arm bent at an unnatural angle. Gathering her gently, nausea rose stronger, seeing her suffering. I turned and ran on unsteady legs through the nightmarish woods, holding her close, though my own head throbbed torturously. The girl moaned pitifully, yet clutched at me with her good hand. Somewhere out here lay help, sirens, salvation. If only my shredded body could carry us a while longer into the shadows lengthening between the trees. Stumbling, falling, dragged myself up and pressed on blindly as her breath grew more ragged against my neck. Darkness crept into my tunneling vision, but still, we fled from the wreckage of that place, two broken souls clinging to life together against the primal night closing in around our escape. The forest seemed endless, each harsh breath agony as I hauled us toward salvation. But then, through the blur of pain, lights in the distance. I stumbled onto blacktop just as a station wagon emerged from the gloom. Seeing my blood-stained form clutching the girl's limp body, they slammed to a halt. A family spilled out, horror-struck by our condition, but springing into action. Gentle hands pried the child from my grip as I collapsed, strength spent. Dark figures swam in my fading vision. "Hang in there, buddy. Gonna get you help," a man's voice echoed distantly. Cool leather soothed my cheek as their wagon raced through the night. I caught snippets between waves of nausea. 18 miles to the ER. Sometime later, harsh fluorescent lit my return to misery. Paramedics swarmed, cutting clothes and asking questions that gurgled out incomprehensibly. Through it all, I caught glimpses of the little girl similarly surrounded, her mangled arms set in a brace. She sniffled but seemed stable, bolstering my will to cling to consciousness a while longer. Beeping machines pulled me reluctantly to awareness, harsh antiseptic assaulting my nose. Hospital. Sterility meant escape or capture. My eyes fluttered open to an empty ward. A nurse scurried over, concern dissolving to relief seeing me cognizant. "You're awake. How do you feel, sir?" "The girl, where?" My croak gave way to coughs, throat sandpaper raw. "She's resting comfortably now. Just a broken arm thanks to you," she soothed, checking vitals. "You, on the other hand, severe concussion, 4 broken ribs." Panic rose, cutting through lingering fog. Couldn't afford questions, cops. my face schooled to innocence, voice taking on a weary charm. "Glad to hear she's all right. Please, I need to see the doctor." Under my pleading, the nurse softened. Soon after, the doctor appeared, stern yet empathetic. I spun my tale. A simple rescue attempt ending poorly, leaving out messy details. Feigning exhaustion, I appealed to his better nature. He eyed me thoughtfully, no doubt sensing half-truths yet moved by plight. With a reluctant sigh, he agreed discharge despite risk if I promised rest. My aching body protested each movement as I dressed slowly in the empty room. But I had to know the girl fared well before limping into whatever fresh hell awaited. Furtive as a shadow, I crept to the nurse's station, scanning the patient charts. There, room 212, my little rescuer listed stable. Giving thanks, I turned to depart, only to freeze at a strange sight down the hall. A shady man paused outside 212, furtively checking over his shoulder. Our eyes met, and something cold and calculating flickered there before he shot into a sprint. Adrenaline drowned my pain as instinct took over. This creep's interest in the room bode ill. I gave chase as fast as battered flesh allowed, cursing my condition. He wound like an alley cat through sterile corridors, sparing panicked glances back at my gaining pursuit. An escape, or bid to lose a witness to darkness. Either way, his flight sealed guilt. Rounding a corner, I saw him shoulder open a stairwell, and muffled shouts drifted down. Renewed vigor and fury coursed my limbs. The stairwell echoed with labored breathing as we descended in a mad plummet to the lowest level. Bursting through the exit, the lot sprawled before us under buzzing lamps, his only escape now metal and wheels. But he faltered in the vast concrete jungle, buying me time to make the final lunge. We collided with a grunt, tumbling hard across punishing asphalt. Fear and fury lent him desperate strength to flail, knife flashing wildly. I bided my moment, gripping his wrist in an unforgiving vice until the steel clattered away. Then my foot found satisfying purchase on his twisted features. As he slipped blissfully into darkness, implications crashed around my panting form. No car, no answers here. Only the ragged thump of sirens drawing near. Scanning frantically, I noticed a half-hidden entrance. Dragging his limp mass through revealed a maze of maintenance tunnels, perfect for a private chat away from prying eyes and ears. With a heave, his heels skipped down damp concrete steps into musty shadows where no help would find him until I had the truth. Time to wake sleeping dogs. My fists would conduct the interview. Answers would come, one way or another, before the night was through. The man stirred feebly, groaning into consciousness. Barely giving him breath, my baton found purchase across his ribs with a crack. "Talk, or the next one caves your skull!" I spat through bloody teeth, exhaustion fueling harder blows. He gibbered nonsense at first, pleading some higher power's protection. But my next swing caught his knee, joint popping sickly under the rod's kiss. Name. Location. What do you filth want with the girl? Each question landed fresh agony as bones bent beyond repair under my assault. At last he squealed between sobs, broken both body and will. The order. We aimed only to use her gift. But now they'll kill us all for failure. I'm dead either way. Gift? My patience snapped. Fist shot out to rupture his nose, spraying across the damp floor. Who? Where? Through swollen lips he burbled, "The Order of the Moth. Meets in the old asylum ruins off Art 4. But no lowly fool like me knows more, I swear." The asylum. I knew the place. And now I had led on this order. Whoever they were, no way I let scum like him walk free to strike again. With a scowl, my club ended his useless life, secrets dying with him in the dark. The asylum's gates swallowed me with an ominous creak, headlights unveiling its crumbling facade. Decades had ravaged the towering structure into a moldering shell, yet traces of its sinister past lingered palpably within those walls. Flashing my dimming light across peeling signage, names leapt out hauntingly. Electric shock therapy, deep sleep treatment, hydrotherapy. A chill pricked my flesh, thinking how countless tormented souls had suffered here in the name of healing. Steeling my nerves, I scaled a vine-choked balcony and slid into an open window frame, boots crunching shards of clouded glass. Musty air met my lungs, carrying stagnant echoes of aged misery. My tiny beam illuminated faded murals depicting smiling nurses tending blithe patients. Only these cheerful scenes peeled away to rot beneath, hinting at dark secrets hidden underneath. Down crumbling halls I crept, glimpsing empty rooms whose rusted fixtures bore testimony to brutality disguised as care. Chains dangled from the ceiling where struggling forms had once been bound and silenced permanently. Deeper into the belly of this nightmarish place I delved, the feeble light dancing upon cobwebbed horrors around every mold-slimed corner. Did some fragment of tormented souls remain imprinted upon these ragged walls, crying out their nameless agony to any who dared listen? Through the crumbling facility I crept, Maglight's feeble circle cut abruptly by a distant drone of voices echoing down aged halls. Curiosity and caution battled as I stealthily tracked the sounds through shattered rooms pregnant with past pains. Rounding a final corner, rancid velvet curtains came into view, their sumptuous glow a stark contrast to the decay surrounding. Slipping close, I peered within to behold a nightmare chamber's revelry. Robed figures milled about festooned tables, heaving with feast and wine, faces hidden behind ornate masks resembling skulls and insects. Their casual chatter drifted eerily towards my hiding place. "The solstice nears, brothers. Have you numbers for our dark god's feasts?" droned a sonorous voice, bedecked in gilt-trimmed black. Replies peppered the cramped air nonchalantly. 6 for Hecate, 8 for Baphomet, as if discussing evening's fare. My fists knotted hearing lives casually bartered to nameless gods of wickedness. But what chilled most was one acolyte's chipper comment. Should meet our annual quota with room to spare this hallow. Followed by cheerful laughter that curdled my blood. These demons masked as men cavorted blithely, oblivious to the rage beginning to boil within my soul's dark recesses at their sociopathic normalization of human depravity. Tonight, their perverse revels would end forever, one way or another ... in blood. The conversation's carefree din hushed as a new presence entered the decadent chamber. Swathed in billowing black robes embellished with sinister sigils, the cloaked figure raised gnarled hands skyward. As one, the assembled acolytes prostrated before this vessel of malevolence. When he spoke, his voice shook the very foundation with its unnatural resonance. "O mighty Yog-Sothoth, bringer of pandemonium, grant us your eternal guidance as we endeavor to sow chaos through the realms. Our dark gods gain dominion. Hastur sits enthroned in Carcosa, as Baphomet now serves great Cthulhu. Even Lucifer quakes before the nameless fury of Azathoth." Goosebumps broke across my flesh, listening to blasphemous union between man and cosmic nightmare invoked in prayer. Their insidious intent became agonizingly clear. Drag humanity screaming into eternal madness and damnation alongside their depraved deity masters. "Almighty Sothosil, Grand Marquis of Hell, we beseech your favor as we storm the gates of heaven itself." The zealot howled in a tongue-twisting manner that defied physiology. Barely contained was my rising tide of fury and revulsion. Yet in that moment, a more disturbing realization came. These monsters believed every word and would stop at nothing in service to their unholy cause. As I crouched in fearful awe, an unnatural wind arose, howling through the ruin, as if hell itself echoed their macabre petitions. My hands twitched instinctively for weapons as two robed acolytes dragged a thrashing youth before that demonic altar. But unseen forces held me paralyzed, a helpless observer to the horror unfolding. With cold ritual, the zealot began etching scenes of depravity upon the altar's surface with dragged blades, invoking that name which chilled my soul. The victim's screams curdled to whimpers as binding sorceries took hold, rendering escape futile. "Great Sothasil, we beseech thee, accept this man's soul as offering, that your favor may continue guiding our work, resounding through spheres mortal and beyond," intoned the blasphemous priest. From hidden recesses, a man brought forth a bowed razor, gleaming with inhuman edge. My entire being screamed for intervention, yet flesh remained petrified witnesses. Steel sliced open the victim's throat in Agenethros, arterial spray painting that profane surface scarlet. My eyes strained through the gloom, rage and fear pumping hard in my veins. They hadn't yet spotted my hiding place, but it was only a matter of time. I could hear the guttural chants rising up from that cursed chamber, mingled with a cry that cut me deep. The girl. My failure would mean losing another innocent to these madmen. No way was I letting that happen, not if there was still breath in my body. My hands tightened around the grip of my blade, cold comfort in the dark, but all I had left. A plan started shaping, desperate, but it was the best I could muster, caged like an animal. When the moment struck, I'd take my shot. Survival was secondary now to saving her. Voices swelled closer, dancing torchlight staining the black. Heart pounding, I drew a jagged breath and steadied myself. Now or never. It was do or die, and I'd already used up my 9 lives. As flickering shapes passed by, I exploded from ambush with a primal yell. Before they found purchase, my steel bit deep. "Run!" I screamed to the girl, striking out blind. This was the play to end all plays, victory or a violent end. I'd make these cult bastards regret they didn't slaughter me when they had the chance. The robed bastards spilled after us with shrieks like damned souls, blades shining malignant in the gloom. I didn't look back. No need. Their numbers spoke clearly enough. We fled down crumbling halls, torches flaring at our heels as the cult closed in fast. Their robes fluttered nightmarish behind charging forms, adorned with grinning bone masks and insectoid features straight from some unholy bestiary. Turning a corner, I snatched the girl's wrist and swung her behind me with a rough shove. "Keep moving!" They funneled around the bend in a rush of rancid velvet and steel, brandishing weapons hungry to taste our blood. A heaving mob of madness spilled down the corridor, too many to bluff or battle. We darted through a gaping hole in the wall, just as grasping talons swiped where we'd stood. Crashing through the woods beyond in blind panic, I thanked some dark providence for the veil of night alone, keeping our life signatures shrouded from their maddened manhunt. But the sounds of wrathful pursuit still echoed all too close behind. This savage game of cat and mouse wasn't over, not until one side stopped moving for good. And I'll be damned if it was gonna be us tonight. My lungs screamed for mercy as we crashed through the forest, cultists nipping our heels. Hoisting the girl's slight frame into my arms, I poured on more speed despite muscles burning protest. Behind us, the sound of pursuit continued unabated, ragged gasps and snapping undergrowth as the monsters chased our scent of fear. I gritted my teeth and pushed beyond the brink of endurance. Suddenly, pain exploded in my side and legs turned to rubber. The ground rushed up as we spilled hard to the damp earth. Rolling, I crushed the girl to my heaving chest, absorbing the brunt with my shoulder. Her cry of pain cut through the night, and my racing hands found the source. Her left arm hung at an unnatural angle where it had snapped earlier. Guilt and terror surged anew, but no time to waste. Gripping her shirt collar, I dragged us under the partial shield of a massive felled tree. Her wide eyes gleamed wet and pleading through the dark as I pressed a shushing hand to her mouth. Moments later, our pursuers crashed by in a rustling wave, cursing angrily at losing the trail. I held deathly still, eyes locked with the girls, listening to the retreat of that hated noise into the enveloping night. For the moment we were saved, but danger remained all too close. And now an innocent was injured further because of my bungled escape. More than ever we had to get to shelter, treatment, and answers. This savage game had only just begun. 7. The shadows began to lift as dawn threatened to breach the tree line. I sat vigil over the girl's still form, watching her shallow breaths in the slowly brightening gloom. She'd collapsed over an hour ago from sheer exhaustion, the toll of our dire ordeal finally overwhelming her youthful frame. I could hardly blame her after the night of madness we'd endured, yet her fall into fitful slumber left me alone on guard against whatever new evils may yet emerge. My regret burned afresh knowing the service pistol was still stuck useless in my junker's locked glove box, miles away crashed in these same unforgiving woods. What I wouldn't have given for its reassuring weight in my hand right then if more cult scum decided to hunt us at daybreak. Funny the meaningless thoughts that crept in at tense moments. While hell raged around, my mind idly recalled mundane repairs or upgrades, interior cleaning, anything to take the edge off high alert. Made the wait more bearable, I supposed, prepared for anything to spring from the mist. A rustle in the brush snapped me on high alert, every sense straining through the gloom. My blade felt like a flimsy deterrent against what terrors lurked in the bush. All I could do was wait and watch until this long night finally ended. I swore we wouldn't last another sunset in these infernal woods without fighting back tooth and nail, cult or whatever else crossed our path. They wouldn't take us without hell to pay. As dawn's pale light filtered through the woods, the girl stirred from fitful dreams. Pain seized her broken arm like a ghostly talon at consciousness's call. Her eyes flew open, lips parting in a scream that never came. My finger pressed gentle to them, reminded the hush we needed to survive. Her nod acknowledged the danger still lurking too near for sound or fury. While she clenched tears, I scanned our surroundings and stood wary. No signs of robed predators, yet I dared not relax our vigil yet. Survival demanded focus, singular on escaping these endless trees. Selecting supple branches, I fashioned a makeshift splint from shoelace bindings. Poor medicine, but better than leaving her angel's wing to ravage without aid. She bore the tightening pain stoically. Together, we melted from our hiding place onto a familiar trail signs. Every step hammered home my failure to protect this innocent dragged too deep in my war. But thirst for vengeance would have to wait. First, we lived to fight another day. The trees seemed to mock our suffering as birdsong announced this new dawn. Yet while breath remained, there was hope, and a score still to settle here once and for all. Through the thinning trees, the promise of clearer skies and civilization grew louder by the minute. Engines rumbled in the distance, and that blessed scent of tarmac hung heavy after an eternity spent fearing each footfall. Safety felt close enough at hand that I turned to the brave girl at my side. "Names are Jimmy. And you?" Her eyes met mine steady, a spark of life despite her battered frame. "Sabine," she answered softly. We walked as Sabine spoke of her village, the dancing, any gentle thoughts to keep demons at bay. My thoughts turned dark, dwelling on how far these woods had been defiled and what other souls had disappeared within. But for now, escape remained our single focus. Keeping to the tree line's edge, we followed the rumbling road closer till it emerged before us. A passing truck offered hope. I whistled and waved frantically until it slowed. Wary stares turned sympathetic seeing our sorry states, offering a lift that could save our lives. At the crossroads ahead, we thanked the kindly stranger, assured the turn would lead to my crashed car, and from there the means to finally fight back. The man gave us a ride and I greased his palm. No more running. Time to hunt those hunting us and end the madness, once and for all. The truck dumped us where tarmac met dirt. Sabine eyed the twisting path ahead warily, but I flashed her a grin. Nothing but smooth sailing from here, kid. We crept through foliage towards my battered ride. My gut said nobody lurked to spring some fresh hell, but experience demanded care. I signaled Sabine to hang back as I closed on the Chevy, crouched low and swift. Just her shell sat silent. No signs of cult scum nearby. I let out a breath and signaled the all clear. With relief, I popped the glove box to claim my Colt, tucking it secure before rooting the spare keys. Popping the Chevy's trunk revealed my ace in the hole bolted down for such a time. I pulled free my bug-out bag, packed heavy with protection against just such a rainy day. Money, IDs, and a burner greeted my searching hands. I powered up the phone with a grim smile. One call and we're in the wind, kid. Just gotta grab us a ride. Sabine squeezed my arm gratefully as the line rang out, her steady gaze promising she was far from done in this fight we'd unwittingly joined against the darkness in these damned woods. A half-hour later, dust heralded company. Sabine clutched my arm tight as a nondescript sedan rolled into view. My hand drifted casual to my piece till recognition lit my eyes. Frankie hopped out smiling, though his eyes scanned keen as ever for fresh threats. Our grip held meaning beyond words before he climbed into the trailing ride, calling out we'd be square. The car puttered off down the long road, our problems now his to remedy. I helped Sabine gently into the hot-wired Honda's passenger seat, slapping a comforting hand on her shoulder. Don't you worry none, kid. Old Doc Bailey's fixed me up good as new more off than I deserve. We tore down the dirt path hell-bent, flying low under the cover of elm trees till civilization peeked through. Pulling up to the tidy manor house, I spotted Doc's familiar form tending wounded stray cats on her front porch. Doc Bailey got to work patching our wounds with steadfast hands. Sabine grit her teeth, brave as any soldier under the doc's care. My meds took the edge off watching her splint the kid's shattered wing back straight. Bandages finished, Doc beckoned me aside. What in blazes happened out there, Jimmy? I laid it straight. The cult, the chase, the girl dragged into my war. Her eyes darkened, hearing our plight. Keep a close eye, you hear? Devil's work afoot in these parts. I gripped her steely forearm in thanks and promise. Won't let her drift from sight again, Doc. You have my word. Supplies in hand, she clasped my shoulder stern. These Vicodin will keep the pain at bay. You take care of that girl now, McNeil, and be damned careful. Those woods hold more than meets the eye, and not to mention you're still a wanted man in these parts. I would ask if you had balls or steel, or if you were crazy, but I know the answer. We said our farewells as Sabine dozed, exhaustion dragging her under at last. I stowed the meds with a weary sigh, stealing one last glance back at the sanctuary we left behind. The sedan ate up highway, putting miles between us and that cursed wood. Sabine dozed fitful in the passenger seat, pain flickering behind closed lids. My mind wandered dark places contemplating all that led us to this pass. Memories crawled unbidden of divorce proceedings, my bitter ex draining me dry and depriving me even this subtle refugee's location. But in this moment, I thanked God or whoever listened that one card remained up my tattered sleeve. Soon familiar scrubland rolled past, nothing for miles in any direction. Pulling onto an unmarked dirt track, Dust billowed behind as the house emerged solitary on the flat plain. No tail had stirred, trust me. I checked vigorously, just lingering instinct from my spook days. Cutting the ignition, I scanned the perimeter through the glass. Still alone as the day I first found this piece of shit, God willing it would offer shelter till our business concluded. Gently rousing Sabine, I helped her weary form from the sedan. With one last sweep to be sure, we slipped around back through a cleverly disguised trapdoor. Inside, dust sheets shrouded sparse furnishings, but solid walls and a locked door constituted refuge enough for now. Setting Sabine to rest, I ventured back topside under cover of night to be absolutely certain no soul stirred for miles in any direction, and our sanctuary remained unbreached. Only then could we rest and plan our next move. Come morning, I swore I'd have answers from Sabine, by request or otherwise. I pulled up a chair beside Sabine's cot, studying her weary features. Where'd you call home, kid? Her eyes watched me warily. A village beyond the forest. Mama and Papa came here on pilgrimage, but the first night... Tears welled, unshed. Why'd those cultists have it out for you? I prodded gently. She shook her head. I don't know. Everything happened so fast. Sighing, I leaned in. Sabine, this is important. Can you do something special? A pause, then barely. Sometimes I hear voices. People talking when they're not around. My eyebrows raised. Whose voices? My grandmama's. Even though she's dead, I still hear her sometimes. I scratched my stubbled chin thoughtfully. Could be those robed bastards were after more than just a little girl. With a kindly smile, I said, Get some rest, kiddo. We'll figure this out together. Her tense shoulders relaxed slightly as sleep quickly overtook her again. With Sabine asleep, I shut myself in the study. Time to dig deeper on these robed bastards chasing us. First stop, the Order of the Moth. Sketchy information at best. They kept off grid by design. Mainstream sources spun the usual psychobabble on cult indoctrination and missing persons reports. Frustrated, I dove down internet rabbit holes. Chatter forums and Reddit threads held fragmented pieces of the true puzzle. Strange weather patterns preceding disappearances near the forest, going back generations. Locals speaking of the moth's touch and avoiding those woods after dusk. One poster claimed distant kin vanishing in the 1920s after meeting the Moth Queen. Queer superstitions, to be sure, but where there's smoke. Cross-referencing locations and dates, a dark pattern emerged. Periodical isolation, indoctrination, and ritual offerings in that cursed place. But to what end? And how did a little girl's gift factor in their schemes? Sun soon rose, answers still elusive, but one thing became clear. The Order's influence ran deep as these roots, and their reach was wide as these plains. Time to stir up some hornets. Sabine slept as I put in calls to some shady friends. My suspicions grew she was a homing beacon for those cultist dogs. How else they snatch her so quick from the hospital wing? If true, staying cooped here invited trouble fast. We had to keep moving under their radar while I felt out leads. Frankie would check his underworld contacts. Somebody always knew something in this town. Night fell as my inquiries bore scarce fruit. I crushed a couple doggy Vicodins fine and stirred them into Sabine's tea, hoping the painkiller knocked her out through the next harrowing leg of our flight. I dry swallowed a few myself, muscles and psyche screaming for relief. But rest would have to wait. Danger was our constant shadow. I roused Sabine gentle, helping her to the fresh sedan waiting ghosts under cover of darkness. Our route tonight would be rambling, full of switchbacks on back roads to throw anyone tailing us. The headlights cut twin tunnels through the blackness. Sabine dozed in the seat beside me, for now unconscious to the perils ahead. I gripped the wheel grim and drove fast into the unknown, keeping ever vigilant for our unseen stalkers. The miles melted away as we rattled down serpentine back roads. Jimmy's deductive mind pieced the clues fast. Sabine dozed in fits, jostled by our flight. I kept glancing back, checking for headlights gaining in the blackness. My hands itched for some payback. After a few more twists, Frankie called back. He dug up intel on frequent haunts of the Order's higher-ups. Between that and my research, one location stood out miles from any town. A church, owned by the same man who ran that crooked asylum, where the cult had snatched Sabine before. All roads pointed there. I gunned the engine, hungering now for answers instead of just escape. The sky lightened dimly as we left true civilization far behind. Through the trees soon loomed our destination, solitary and silent at the top of a barren hill. I cut the engine a discreet distance off, creeping closer on foot while gently rousing Sabine. Shadows stirred within those creaking walls, but help or harm, I'd soon know the evil cancer had metastasized here and ended all. We crept through long grass towards the looming church. Broken stained glass grinned lipless, a dark omen. Easing Sabine and I inside, I kept her small hand clutched tight in mine. Climbing stairs soundless as ghosts, we gained the choir loft above the main floor. From here we watched unseen as the gathering grew below. No clergy greeted this congregation. Figures filtered in, dressed as some feral tribe from legends, leather, bones, and weapons strapped bare. Crude faces upturned expectantly to their unknown prophet. A robed one emerged now from shadows, throwing back their cowl to reveal a gaunt visage. As they launched into a sermon of depraved heresy, I gripped Sabine closer, revolted yet compelled. The prophet's voice rang clear through the crumbling nave, fingers clenched before them like gnarled talons. The old ones stir in their eternal slumber, my brethren. Their epic comes again to reclaim a world grown soft under false gods. Muttered amens rumbled through the assembly. I caught the gleam of eager fever in mad eyes below. We stand at the crucible, with the cosmos crumbling into raw chaos once more. From those ruins shall a new dominion arise, and we, the chosen, shall rule where all others perished. Their cheers shook dust from rafters. I shot a worried glance at Sabine, clutching quiet at my side. When the last citadel falls and the final book is consigned to ash, the old psychic powers will awaken undimmed. Reality itself will become soft wax for us to shape anew. Fists clenched in fervor to match the prophet's tightened grip upon their pulpit. I listened rapt, repulsed yet drinking in each morsel to understand and dismantle this blasphemous conspiracy. And so our purpose nears fruition. The prophet's finger stabbed skyward, aiming straight at our hiding place. Gasps and shrieks echoed his reveal. I'd hoped you'd join our revels sooner, travelers, but all fates converge in time. Chaos erupted as robed men rushed us. I emptied my clip rage-fueled into the assault, but they fell upon us all the same. Through the tussle we were subdued, hauled gasping before the congregation. My empty gun clattered away into shadows. Rough rope bit as they bound Sabine and I back to back below the looming crucifix. I thrashed against my binds, roaring wild threats. The prophet leaned coolly in, tracing a nail down my cheek in mock comfort. Fear not. Your sacrifices will birth such glory as this world's never known. Dark laughter swelled as they melted back towards the church, leaving us as offerings to some nameless horror. Tick-tock, tick-tock, I mocked, glaring past tangled binds at the robed figures lurking beyond firelight's edge. Their leader pushed through, bony mask grinning hollow in the gloom. I hawked and spat at their tattered hem, sneering. Who picks out your clothes, Gramps? Blind old granny on her deathbed? Laughter bubbled in my throat, the only weapon left. A throat clear, then a sibilant hiss. Mock us all you like, fool. By dawn you'll pray for mercy at our feet. Mercy? From toothless inbreds in Halloween costumes? I jerked against my bonds, feeling first fibers fray. Patience. Keep him engaged. Buy precious moments. Their tone remained hateful calm. Your eyes will soon behold wonders that break all men, child. Then you'll understand. Snorting, I rolled my eyes. Only wonder is how you bozos wipe your own asses without clues. Sabine squirmed faintly at my back, fear palpable though she stayed mute as instructed. I had to drag this out. His fist struck swift, pain exploding across my jaw, but my grin only widened through dribbling blood. That the best you got, virgin? Don't quit your day job. A beefy hand cut off further taunts, leaving me gasping. But any pain was victory if it delayed the ritual a while longer. I spat another crimson globule at their robed leader's feet. What's the matter, you inbred pansy? Angry cause no one came to your birthday? A snarl ripped from beneath their mask. You insolent whelp, we will flay the mockery from your tongue. Oh, someone learned a big word. My raw wrists chafed, bindings nearly severed. Just a little more. When your flayed corpse feeds our hounds, you'll regret each jibe 1,000-fold. They stepped near, vibrating with restrained violence. I met their hollow eyes and grinned wider. At least then I won't have to see your ugly mug anymore. Consider it a favor, Grandpa. A fist like iron collided with my nose. Warm blood ran in twin streams, but I cackled madly through it, refusing to give ground. In my peripheral, Sabine's bonds grew slack, just a little longer. Boo-hoo-hoo! Did I make the whittle baby angry? Gonna cry to Mommy? My swollen eyes shone with challenge. A roar issued forth as they drew back their boot, intent to cave my skull. The leader's angry ranting proved his weakness, loving the sound of his own deranged voice. Precious seconds ticked by unnoticed as Jimmy's plan took shape. Then came the crunch of tires on wet earth outside, drawing every robed head towards the sound. The door burst inward with a bang, vomiting a hail of gunfire into the startled cult. Robed bodies jerked and fell, peppered with bullets. In that brief window, Jimmy launched himself backwards atop little Sabine, his bulk covering her from the deadly spray. Bullets bit viciously into flesh around them as he shielded her limp form. Screams and cries faded to gurgles and silence within moments. When heavy boots scuffed through the gore-slick church floor, Jimmy craned his head around sweat-stiffened hair to see salvation. Well, well, looks like someone owes me a favor, Frankie drawled, lowering his steaming piece. Behind him stood a crew of unsavory allies, weapons ready. With Frankie's help, Jimmy's bonds were swiftly cut. Sabine lay pale and still beneath, but breathing at least. The surviving cultists had fled, but their reckoning was nigh. With Sabine secured, Jimmy turned to his rescuer. "Oh, you big for this, Frankie. But first, we end these bastards for good." Beyond the carnage, the forest's dark heart called them still. Time to repay black debts in blood. Jimmy shouldered his piece, eyes flinty and set. "Frankie, you're with me. Same with you three, the rest of you stay here. Guard the girl." He led the way into the engulfing forest, picking out faint broken bracken where robed figures had crashed panic-stricken between the looming trunks. 2 hard hours of tracking ensued as the light failed. Jimmy's thirst for vengeance drove him doggedly on their trail, pausing only to check clues by flashlight's beam. Deeper into the wilderness they pushed, the sanctum's location undoubtedly intended hidden from interlopers. But these woods held no more secrets from Jimmy. At last, the tree line spit them into a small moonlit clearing. A ramshackle compound loomed from a hill's crest, more bones than wood. A single guard hurried to bar the rotting gates. "Looks like we found their nest, Frankie boy," Jimmy rasped, leveling his piece with a grim smile. "Time to smoke out the vermin." The gate guard let out an inhuman shriek, gurgling out as Frankie's bullet shattered his throat. From within the compound, answering howls rose like a hellish choir. Jimmy grinned wolfishly, raising his sawed-off. "Let's welcome our host proper, boys." As one, his ragged crew roared and surged through the gates, automatic gunfire tearing a hole straight to hell. Gangs of every ilk, disciples, Crips, Black Pea Stones united in vengeance. Each man there knew Jimmy had their back in kind someday, making them unafraid of any devils this night. The cultists met their charge without quarter. Leather-clad warriors erupted from every crumbling shack, firing spells near as bullets from hands raw with eldritch power. Jimmy's militia answered with lead. Bodies fell and rose bloody on both sides amidst flashes and echoed reports. But ever they gained ground through sheer ferocity. Half the compound burned before the last were routed. Jimmy emerged grimy and laughing from the flames, rubbing blood from his eyes to see Frankie approach. "We got 'em all. Payments due, Jim." Spent clips tinkled to the dirt as guns were tossed aside. Their debt was paid in full here in Hell's Half-Acre. As the compound's fires guttered to ash behind them, Jimmy turned to Frankie grim-faced. "Check on the girl. Something ain't right." Frankie dialed two-way, but only static answered his hails. A icy pit swallowed Jimmy's guts whole. "Double time now." Through the smoky woods they thundered, an ill wind carrying presentiments of fresh horror. Bursting from the tree line, their worst fears materialized. The girl was gone. In her place, Frankie's men lay sprawled and disemboweled, the clearing awash with gore under the red hands of dawn. Jimmy stumbled among the butchered corpses, his scans lighting on shell casings and scuff marks in the dirt, signs of a vicious, one-sided fight. "They must have come through during the raid," he growled, every sinew coiling taut as steel cable. Whoever had her now would learn agony before extinction. Frankie laid a hand on his friend's trembling shoulder. "We'll find her, Jim, and may God have mercy on their souls." For mercy was a stranger to Jimmy now. Only the hunt and hot vengeance remained as he inhaled the scent of blood on the wind. The laughter came again. Sabine's voice modulated into a basso roar that shook dead leaves from the trees. Jimmy spun, snarling, as the source materialized in a pool of unearthly light. She hung suspended above the clearing, tiny body writhing at impossible angles beneath a huge exoskeleton taking shape. Wings like banners stitched with human skulls erupted from her back, while limbs stretched and narrowed into spidery extensions. As golden-booted toes tapped down and ignited the grass, blazing circles closed around Jimmy and Frankie in an unstoppable ring of fire. A dozen pairs of 8 eyes blinked open on the thing that had been a child, regarding them hungrily. "Sabine, fight this!" Jimmy roared, gun trembling in his fist. But what peered back was no little girl, only an eldritch engine of annihilation wearing her mortal meat as a costume. It lunged without warning, blurringly fast on all fours as flames roared higher, cutting off escape. Jimmy had but heartbeats before fiery death, or worse, overtook them, and this abomination had already proven beyond any mercy's reach. The moth's claws scrabbled for purchase as Jimmy rolled beneath its lunge, springing up with gun blazing. Frankie's shots punched into chitin with wet cracks, eliciting an ear-splitting screech that shook the forest. They turned and ran as one, boots pounding the scorched earth as an inferno raged at their backs. The demon's wings beat like a hurricane, flinging handfuls of charred leaves in pursuit. Every limb moved with hellish grace and fury. "Keep firing!" I yelled, risking a shot over my shoulder. His round sparked off one flailing limb, but the abomination showed no signs of slowing. Frankie loosed another volley into the moth's misshapen bulk, spurting ichor wherever he struck home. But Sabine's possessed body seemed able to absorb any hurt, barraging onwards with a hunger too profane to be denied. The fire now engulfed half the clearing, trapping them in its conflagration with only one escape, to turn and make their final stand against the horror hunting them through the smoke and flames. My boot snagged a root, hurling me to the scorched earth with bone-cracking force. Through the agony unfurling in my side, I willed myself up just as claws descended in a killing strike. But before the moth's maw could close around me, a figure materialized like a phantom to place itself between beast and prey. "Enough!" The stranger's command rang with a power beyond mortal ken. Impossibly, the moth pulled up short, hovering before him with all 6 eyes regarding this new development. My vision swam, but I beheld broad shoulders silhouetted against the inferno, a face wreathed in shadow. Where this man had come from, I knew not. As the stranger stepped closer to the moth, its twisting form seemed to shrink back from his presence, though no fear showed in its many eyes. Again he spoke, this time in a tongue that chilled my blood to hear. "Take me instead. I am the one you truly want." I could only watch, wheezing, as the man spread his arms in invitation to the monster. They stared at one another, man and beast, as if communicating beyond words. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, a brilliant light erupted between them. I threw an arm over my eyes against the searing glow. As sudden as it came, the light fled, leaving darkness deeper than before. Blinking away purple spots, I peered into the empty clearing. Gone were the man and the moth. In their place was only a smoldering scar upon the earth, still radiating an unearthly heat. Mystified and wearied to my soul, I collapsed back into fitful sleep as dawn's light broke over the blasted forest. Whatever demons haunted these woods, it seemed they had claimed another victim to their hellish games. But for tonight, an uneasy peace had been bought at a terrible price. I could only pray it would last. The smell of earth and ashes dragged me from fitful nightmares toward consciousness. As awareness seeped in, a familiar face swam into focus above me. Frankie, hand outstretched in offer. I grasped it gratefully, letting him haul me upright on legs like newborn deers. Dawnlight filtered pink through ash-draped boughs to reveal the ravaged clearing, and a flood of chaotic memory returned all at once, demanding answers I did not have. Where had the man and beast gone? What bargain had been struck as I lay senseless? Most painfully, what of little Sabine, whose soul seemed lost before we ever met? Did she know her own tragic fate? I leaned heavy on Frankie's steadying arm, squinting against the sunrise's glare off blackened earth. Behind us, night's shadows still huddled thick as a shroud, though their demons had for now receded. My lungs seized with each inhale of acrid air. Yet I lived, against longest odds. A hunted man granted another day's succor from a dark design I did not comprehend. All I knew was I wanted answers, if any remained to be found in this blighted forest where mysteries seemed to breed more mysteries. A few hours passed in a blur as we pushed onward, driven more by instinct than plan. At last we stumbled upon an old Route 66 diner, its neon grill sign flickering fitfully. Inside, we claimed a booth resembling an island amidst an empty sea. A grizzled waitress brought weak coffee and yesterday's pies without a word. I nursed the bitter brew's warmth, gazing into its inky depths as if answers lay within. Frankie broke the contemplative silence. "What now, Jimmy? You're a wanted man, same as always. I huffed a laugh lacking all humor. Ain't nothing new there, Frankie boy. I've been a lowlife my whole life. Guess now I just gotta play the part. My mind replayed that night's terrors on loop, haunting as the forest from whence they sprang. An obsession was taking root, as potent in its own way as the vengeance which spawned it. Truth is, I continued darkly, thanks to this Order of the Moth, I got me a brand new distraction to keep me entertained wherever the trail may lead. I met Frankie's eyes at last, letting him see the flinty resolve within. And you know me. I always follow a trail to the bitter end, one way or another. Ain't nothing gonna stop me finding the heart of this horror show, you feel me? He nodded slowly. Our long acquaintance meant he understood what drove me better than any. Come hell or high water, this hunt would run its brutal course. I tossed a wad of crumpled bills onto the table, barely noting the waitress's nod of thanks as my mind churned furiously. Stepping back out under the aching neon, I lit a smoke and paced, trying to corral the chaos of thoughts into something resembling a plan. Fact was, not much was known about this Order of the Moth. Their motives, origins, all shrouded in deeper night than the forest hid. But some telltales had emerged in blood and fire. They operated in shadowed places, remote from prying eyes. Woods, ruins, dens of depravity few dared trespass. Secrecy was paramount. Masks, robes, rituals obscured behind barrier upon barrier. And they left remnants. Twisted creatures like the Mothborn, warped flesh puppets of some grand blasphemy. Empty husks where souls once resided. They paid fealty to powers unnatural, profane. Most striking were their materials, patchwork leathers stitched with human insigniae, bone charms, curses scrawled on skin, all the detritus of depraved rites conducted under the eyeless watch of twisted idols. I started the car, peeling away as tires spat gravel. A plan was taking shape, however nebulous. I'd start with contacts in low-down places, the seamy fringes haunting remote byways and trailways, eyes and ears to the ground. Word would spread in due time, as it always did, seeping out amongst the dregs. Soon, answers would come. And when they did, I'd be waiting, gun in hand and vengeance on my mind. The trail was fresh. It was only a matter of time before the hounds were loosed once more.